left off before the break. Just mentioning here that I somehow managed to use or find the backup of my previous representation with the triangles. The triangle that von Mises is famous for. He said there is a magic troika between the inventor, the capitalist, and the entrepreneur. Now, here are the triangles that I've drawn in my interpretation of that model. One thing I forgot to mention was, of course, the instrument being the gold bond. Now, I finished on this widening of the spreads having a certain cause, namely the deterioration of credit. That could be other causes. Under a irredeemable standard, the laws have changed, because now the hexagonal model can still be applied. But what changes is this. The ceiling is now determined by marginal productivity of speculation. We have seen this in 1980, when the spread was so high that it went up to 18%. At 18%, almost, which was unseen for the last, best part of a few centuries even. 18% was enormously high. That's when the jitters started, and of course that's when you have speculators. And the marginal speculator, you can envisage that by, the one with the not so strong hand, and he starts to unload all of his assets and prices drop. You can see that in the market. The weak hands dropping and the prices of the market drop. Same here. The law of marginal productivity of speculation would determine the ceiling and the floor, not longer dominant, because gold coin has disappeared. And you cannot, you can withdraw money, paper money from your bank, but what would that help you? You are then jumping into an even worse situation. So basically, withdrawing money and let your feet do the walking and the talking to your bank is not going to help. In fact, they don't even listen to you. They cannot even listen to you. There is the marginal, this time the law of marginal liquidity preference, or the yield curve, as it was explained yesterday, is now at work. And this goes to as low as almost zero. I've drawn here yesterday the yield curve. Here it is. Why is the yield curve like this under an irredeemable standard? And what would it look like under a gold standard? Under a paper money standard, this is the yield curve. Under a gold standard, it would be flat. Because 1 ounce is 1 ounce is 1 ounce.
It would be flat or flatter?
Flat. There would be little blips. But for all intents and purposes, it's flat. And the little blips would be taken care of with a reconsolidation fund, or a sinking fund, or any kind of fund that would take care of the little blips. Pretty constant. And that you can see, in fact, if you have this book about the history of interest rates, written by Professor Homer Silla, I think. You can see it. He makes, it's not my investigation, I'm just not pulling this out of thin air. He made an investigation into the Victorian era in Britain under a gold standard, and rates were pretty
stable. Rising a little bit? As you go.
Every 25 years it goes a bit up or it goes a bit down, or there may be something happening like an earthquake and then it
I'm
goes
not sure
up.
we're talking about the same thing. I'm not saying that over time, in 1870 is the rate the same as 1880, but is the rate on a 2-year bond the same as the rate on a 10-year bond?
Yes?
And why wouldn't you just lend on a 2-year bond then? Why lock up your money for 10 for no greater rate?
There would be, you would be pretty safe, especially with sinking funds, and you can loan your money on 30 years. It's as safe as loaning it on 5 years.
You're still locking it up though.
Yes, depends on your role. Do you need it or you don't need it? Where are you in this scheme? You may be the young annuitant and, okay, you are hoping for capital gains in 30 years.
I think generally if you lend your money out for 10 years, there might be a slightly greater risk that you don't get it back.
Yeah.
So there might be a little bit of a...
Well, that and the risk that you don't think you'll need it for 10 years today, but next year something happens, you get cancer, and now you need to get it back. That's the human condition. Uncertainty.
Let's not get...
You can sell it easily, so it's probably not much of an issue.
Bit of time preference. You still nevertheless.
Must be a little bit.
We'll come back to that, but I would really like to get stuck into a little exercise, which is a very important point, and please hold that question because I will come back to it. I would love just to finish this. The instrument has changed to irredeemable note or irredeemable debt. Now, for this slide, which is a slide that explains a few things on what the impact is of dropping rates. Now, I have to do a little exercise. And I come back to what I've written yesterday. I'm going to do a little accounting exercise. The professor says, well, dropping interest rates under an irredeemable currency is damaging, and very damaging, especially if it keeps on. Most people don't get it. If you want to know why, I'll take you through a little accounting exercise with the help of an example, the example of the tractor. I've read that example of the sticker price of the tractor, and I run a little bit with it. I can switch this off if you like, but look, please, for a second, listen to this expose. You have an idea. You're an entrepreneur. You have found a little farm and you are in need of a new tractor. Last year in Budapest we've seen what the bid and the ask spread is on consumables, and in this case the consumer of the tractor is you, the farmer, and we've seen how the price of the tractor comes to fruition. You know, bid ask spread there, and who's doing what. Now, you think you are a smart entrepreneur. You need to sit down and do a little calculation. You have X amount of acres, you're going to grow beans, and you need a tractor because it's, much lighter to do that with a tractor than by hand. You know that the tractor is designed for 20 years lifetime. And it doesn't matter if you make jokes about French or German engineering. 20 years is design lifetime. It will last you 20 years, and you are hoping to get for your beans in 20 years each crop 50 which would in 20 years give you thousands. That is what, I mean, that's a small exercise, that's what you hope. What then would be, and I'm trying to arrive at the price, the maximum price that you should pay for your tractor, because if you are going to pay for your tractor that much, that you could actually take that much money and put it in the bank and end up with more than 1,000 in the bank, then you're silly. Don't get sweaty and don't get grey hair and don't do the farming, just go to the bank. So you need to know what's the break even there and what is the maximum price I need to pay for that tractor. The formula is the same always. Present value of the tractor. I'm going to call this amount A. 1 plus, in fact it should be I, the rate of interest, and the number of periods. And that's a minus sign. We have everything. That's 1,000. And we know if we go and borrow or lease that with the bank, we're going to pay 8%. 1 plus 0.8. And that's T, 20 periods, 20 times a crop. Okay, the math genius, where are they? Who's already got the solution? Don't worry. I know, I've done this yesterday.
Peter, that assumes you get a 1,000 at the end.
Look, yes, okay. I know all the financial guys here. I know. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. Of course, we are assuming a lot here. But for the benefit of the people who will watch the video and for the benefit of the people who are not familiar with too intricate present value calculations, this will clear up later when I'm finished why you should be or shouldn't be in business and why and dropping interest rate is having an impact on present values and also on present value of your bond. Look, I started. What is the maximum price that you should be paying for your tractor? I think if I worked it out yesterday, I may be wrong, but I think it's 246 points. Well, it's 246, which means that if you go and pay 246 in the bank, right now get an 8% interest, in 20 years you'll end up with 1,000. Everybody with me? Because that's what this says. So if you're paying more than 248, you've overpaid. You should have put your money in the bank and in 20 years, without getting grey hair, well, okay, after 20 you might get grey hair, but without getting sweaty and without doing the work, you will end up with the same capital as if you would have worked. So obviously you're trying to get this price down, but this is your maximum price. This is your break-even point. Everybody with me? Don't pay more for this tractor or you're silly. Friday night you go to the bank. It's a Saturday evening. You go to the dealership, you got the finance from the bank and you sign the contract. Fine. Please deliver me tomorrow, 1st of January. That's assuming it's not a holiday, but please deliver me tomorrow that tractor. You have signed. You are committed to pay the capitalist 8% on his investment. And you are going to run with this idea, and with a tractor you are going to yield a certain return from that land. And you have a neighbor on the right who's got exactly the same amount of land and who got the same amount of sunshine and rain, and we'll make it very simple. And he's also have the same idea of growing beans, and he's done the same calculation. The only thing is, he's got a different calculation. He's expecting 1,000 in 20 years, but he has to pay 8 to the capital as a remuneration. He's got to pay 1% to the entrepreneur for himself, and 1% also as a remuneration to the manager. So that would be 1.1. Also over 20 years, which means that his calculation will be different. What is he going to pay for that tractor? Knowing that his weighted average cost of capital is different. I've done the calculation for you, it's 140 something. Lower. Don't shoot me down on the maths, I don't have my spreadsheets here. It is lower. So, knowing the law of bidding something up and what should you be bidding, well, here, Professor, I think I offer this as a solution to why the present values are not, the present values of different entrepreneurs are different. And prices of the tractor, of the asset, are not bid up to where there is no more room. They're not bid up to break even because you have a different cost of capital. And of course that's only one factor. If he's got better land, he's got a different structure of yield as well. So I'm offering this as a possible solution as to why prices in the theory of formation of interest are not bid up to the maximum. Because the bidders are the ones who determine the marginal. The marginal one is the one is bidding the most, of course. And if he's really stupid, he's going really high. So, 31st of January, so 31st of December, you signed 1st of January, your tractor comes in. Remember, we're now speaking not about the gold standard, but about a central bank who decides to give everybody a nice present, and they announce on the radio just after you've taken delivery and you have made an entry in your books. And we make that books, assets here, liabilities there, one brand new tractor, and one contract on my shoulders to pay it off. And they're equal. Right? Assets and liabilities are equal in accounting. And you take a cup of coffee, you switch on the radio, and what do you hear? A rate drop was announced. And you see on CNN or on your television that the local economics professor is cheering this up. Wow, fantastic. But of course you've taken your cup of coffee and you've burnt your lips because you can't believe this is not a present. Your neighbor who was doing this different calculation and who refused to pay the uptick in price that you have bid him and you signed the contract. You have another neighbor who has done the same calculation in the same land, and now he says, well, the interest rate has dropped. Fine, I could take this business to the dealership, and he buys the same John Deere tractor that you've got, only a lot cheaper. His yield is the same. Now what does that mean? Some people say, okay, if a drop in interest rate means that it is not good for you, then you have to explain this to me. Well, I'll explain this to you, because your neighbor...
You mean a rise in interest rates?
A rise or a drop could be... It doesn't even matter. Let's do the exercise for the neighbor on the other side. You have a left-hand neighbor, you have a right-hand neighbor. The right-hand neighbor, he's now taking the offer and he's going to the dealership and he's signing with the bank and he gets his brand new tractor, only a lot cheaper. He takes delivery and does his accounts and makes the entry. of course, because he paid less and he gets the same yield because it's the same land, he's a lot more profitable. You are committed to pay capital 8%. I don't know what the other neighbor is committed to pay. Let's say that this was only 4%. Now let's assume, that gives him a lot of room to maneuver. What does that do on your balance sheet? Well, you've just taken delivery, nothing. You sign. You cannot say, because interest rates have increased or decreased, that your liabilities have increased or decreased because you signed for that amount, they will say. Now, you can argue with that, but I'll show you where it hits. It's not on your balance sheet, it's on your P&L where it hits. Why? Why does it hit you in your profit and loss? You may still be profitable and your neighbor may still be more profitable, so what? You think you can make it? Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the professor will come to the story of the ratchet and the linkage with prices. If interest rates go up, prices go up as well in linkage with it. We will probably still see it, I think, yeah. It's an observable phenomenon. You can argue with me, but then you have to disprove the facts that were observed, even by Keynes, I believe. So, on every side of the line, they don't disprove, or they cannot deny that there is a link between interest rates and prices. Now, interest rate was announced, your neighbor has taken it. What will this do eventually on your profit and loss? I'll tell you, prices of beans will go down. And your assumption here, and I'm coming back to Louis, of course, your assumptions of your profitability are now wrong. Because your beans will not be 50 anymore, they will eventually drop. And instead of 9,000, it goes down to 950. Your overall profitability. Feed the 950 into the simple formula and you know what this is going to do, because anything that changes here will have an impact here. You see? If you have bid up to the maximum, an interest rate increase is going to kill you, just as well as an interest rate drop, because you're taking the hit there. We'll do the exercise with an interest rate increase, but first I'll take the interest rate drop, because that is far more hidden. The interest rate drop will make sure that the yield eventually is 950, so everything changes here. I'm not going to do the math, I don't have enough space here anyway, but obviously your neighbor is able, much more able, with a lower interest rate to take that hit than you are, because you are at the limit. In fact, the only way out for you when interest rate drops, the only way to repair the damage would be for you to have a little bit more land. You can try renegotiate your interest rate with your banker on your lease. Good luck with that. And maybe he comes up and says, well, fine, we'll drop it, but I'm going to increase this by another 5 years. And if you're stupid enough, you say, yes, thank you very much. Please note that your tractor has a design lifetime of 20 years and not 25. The other 5 years you're going to be doing the digging yourself. So that's not a solution, trying to bring this down. What you need, you have been damaged. What you need is another piece of land, hoping that the tractor will do that little bit more land, so you can grow a little bit more beans, so your return will be back to 1,000, so that you finally make your repayment to the capitalist. Do you see this? Because I see blank faces. The only way out for you is more land.
That's not a way out either, because that costs money.
Ah, yes.
Or kill your competitor.
Take his land. That would be a solution. But in law we have something like, whoever caused the damage must pay for the damage. Now under a gold standard, you have little interest rate variation, and you could, from reserves, rent a little bit more land and try to make this up. This is your sinking fund. But we don't. We're not under a gold standard. So the sinking fund, maybe your reserves, which means that you go and dig out of your own pocket and rent or buy more land, so you can meet your obligations to the capitalist. But that means all of a sudden, you've been hit because you've got to work harder and more. You need to cultivate more land. In fact, the drop of the interest rates has damaged you. And the damage was caused by whom? A bureaucrat. Thank you very much. Can you sue him? You can try. In fact, this tracker story, you can convince a good judge, and you probably can convince him. And then, although he's convinced, you are going to find out that there is something called immunity for central bankers. Okay, well, what does this story mean? When interest rates drop, you are taking it in your profit and loss account. If you are not getting a check from the government for every time the interest rates drop, and you're not receiving a check to buy more land with that, you're taking it on the chin. And eventually you'll go out of business. This is what the professor has been saying all along. And of course there are objections. If interest rates go up, then the price of an asset goes down, so whatever, At the end of the year, you're supposed to do an inventory. As a good business, you do an inventory, and you have to buy or value that inventory, both assets and liabilities. Fine, interest rates move, you can make adaptations. The problem is getting this accepted because, you cannot convince, probably not your accountant, and certainly not your tax inspector, that you need to up that liability here.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. There's a flaw in the accounting law, and that's not only one, there's more. But this point is very important to make, so that I want you to please get this. It took me a while before I got it. Maybe you're smarter than I am. Probably are. But it's not very visible, this process of deterioration of capital. And even under a gold standard, your capital is also deteriorating because you need to make it productive. And certainly, under a paper standard, the erosion of capital is so much faster if interest rates vary. And if they push down, you probably are not going to make it out of reserves. That is the point I was trying to make, because now we come back to this chart. What's the time? We're over time. 2 more minutes. This is what I meant with the original chart. If interest rates move, you have a profitable business at, I've made it here 3.8%. But if interest rates move, your weighted average cost of capital is still the same, while that of your competitor is different, and you are marginalized with this process here. When this line moves up and down, you've had it. Not directly, but in a while. And that, I think, is why you need this formula is important. The present value formula is important. Some of you are now, you have taken courses, I hope, on present value, future value, annuities, accumulated interest. If you don't, this is the only thing that you need to understand. I had one more slide. Now, this is the traditional model, and I promise we will not go too much over time. I want to compare this hexagonal model to something traditional. What's wrong with the traditional analysis? What does it say? Anatomy of balance sheet recessions, made by a company called Nomura. Well, due credit to Nomura, they've made a fine chart. They're not responsible for the Keynesian model that's depicted here, but let's go through this. So on the top we see the original money flow. Okay, we all get jitters here. Private sector bought assets with borrowed funds. Okay, we know that. Next step, fall in asset prices. Oh, really? Maybe if interest rates went up. If interest rates go up, prices will fall. So where do they get this fall in interest in asset prices? Maybe it is. Maybe they're. I haven't read the entire book, but maybe okay, fine. Let's see. Let's read the following things. What you need to know already. Put a question mark with this. Balance sheet problems develop. Repair balance sheets. Yeah. We know repair balance sheets, but how? Private sector moves away from profit maximization to debt minimization. Probably. Nothing wrong with that. So the private sector pays down debt. Very good. Fall in aggregate demand. Well, probably. No demand for funds. Wrong. Why is that wrong? Nothing?
No demand for funds. What does that mean? Does the company has
Demand for money.
More credit? Or
Demand for money and credit.
for the company?
Yes. In a recession, the demand for money is high. Just because you need to pay down debt. Everybody's trying to collect money, even banks. This is wrong. Oh, here's a good one. We can't go over time here. Fiscal stimulus. What do we know about the interference of the fisc? What do we know about taxation? I'll go back to the drawing here. Anything that interferes with taxation will hit, and it will widen the spread. It will diminish the productivity. Your model decreases in efficiency because the means of finding maximum employment for all participants is diminished because these people are short of income. They are long of income, and they're entering into. Remember, they pay the surplus income to the inventor or to the entrepreneur. But I mean, diminishing these means that you can pay to this very good troika of entrepreneur, inventor, and capitalist. If you diminish those means, then you diminish the efficiency of labor and of capital. And you run with the taxation, and what do you do with this? Bang! They're sort of what? Breaking the vicious cycle. I'm sorry. I mean, the fisc is the cause of the vicious cycle. I'm not anti-taxation as such, but I'm taking the model to its logical limits. Would mean that zero taxation would be the ideal, would be the best. Let's not go there as to zero taxation. That is a different story. I don't believe in that either. I'm a realist also. But
the problem with fiscal stimulus is that there's no money. I mean, if the
yeah.
state stimulating fiscally the economy had excess money and stimulated the economy with it, yes, that would break the cycle temporarily. But it's money they have to borrow.
It shows how difficult of a machine they've constructed with this irredeemable currency and irredeemable debt. This is a picture I took from my college book in 1983-4, giving away my age here. And it says here, machine designed to show the working of the economic system. Fantastic. I stick to my hexagonal model, I understand that. If you stick to this Keynesian machine, it comes out of a book on Keynesianism, unfortunately, then this is what is going to happen to you. And with that, we're 9 minutes over time, but I hope you've enjoyed and learned something from this insight into the workings of the interest rate variations. Very important on your balance sheet, and don't believe the Keynesianists. Thank you.